Good morning.
Or afternoon.
Oh, we nearly had a cheery good morning from David.
I was just about to say, and somebody else came in. So I kind of took a deep breath. Good day, viewer, whatever time you happen to be watching this. It's good to see you. I'm just moving my little arrow on the screen because it's about to go up Reverend Neary's nose. So let me move it to the side. So, okay, I've moved the pointer away. So there we are. Yes, it's going to be a good day, I think. I'm sure lots to do. Lots of emails from me today, apart from the concert at lunchtime and prayers tonight. I'm going to be sat here trying to work out my 150 words on what I believe the vision of the diocese is going to be for the bishop. No more, no less, no outside interference.
Well, we're not going to tell you what to write then.
No, nothing to say.
Nothing to say.
Good. I'm very pleased about that.
When's your homework due?
1st of September, I think.
Oh, well, that's a very long deadline for 150 words. I think I've given people a week.
That's only 5 days.
I know the school mom comes outing you so often. This is the problem, Joe. I think I'll get my piece of card out I wrote on at the Bishop's Council meeting and just check. I'm sure it's the 1st of September, although I probably lost my piece of card. 1st of September, 150 words. What is the diocesan vision? What do you think? No outside help, no interference. I wrote down on my piece of paper at the meeting.
That reminds me of when I did my engineering degree. We were all crammed in the drawing offices like the night before a deadline of a project that we'd had 6 weeks to do. And we were all moaning that we didn't have long enough. And somebody just piped up and goes, yeah, but if they gave us another 2 weeks, all it means is we wouldn't be here for another 2 weeks. And we'd still be cramming in the night before.
Yeah.
It's so true. I'm going to be marking today with my other job hat on. And I've decided that I'm applying the logic that you've just explored, which is the deadline was on Tuesday. I'm going to start the marking today in an effort to get it done ahead of time. Whereas the last time I did the marking, I did start on the day it was submitted, but then I had a bit of a week's gap and then I ended up with a massive backlog at the end. So I've planned some time today to be ahead.
Do you have red and green pens?
No, you do it all on the computer.
Oh,
so you click on boxes and write little comments and things.
No good.
They're big old placement reports, so they're 9,000 words.
No, I'd like the green and red pen myself.
Would you? Okay.
Yeah. Not that I've ever really had to mark anybody's work.
Well, it's a bit of a jump up for me from year 3 maths.
True.
Or whatever it was. So there we are.
Yeah, it's a bit of a. I mean, I was a qualified assessor for nurse training, and I was very good at telling nurses they'd roll bandages up wrong, because I had won as a pupil nurse many years before the best bandage rolling award.
You see, you keep telling me you've never won anything except the egg and spoon race in the swimming pool.
Yeah, but
that's not true, is it?
No, I remember Miss Hickey, who was the student nurse tutor in West Bromwich, ramming it into us, barrel uppermost, nurse, barrel upper, and I was very good. I won the best, the neatest bandage rolling award.
Barrel uppermost.
Yeah.
Is it like toilet rolls? You've got to roll bandages the right way, like the same way you've got to hang toilet rolls.
All level. It's not kind of the kind of centre sticking out.
No, okay.
I was also pretty good when it came to the practical in making our own earbuds and buds for cleaning people's noses, because in those days you had to make your own with a piece of what looked like cocktail stick, but it wasn't, because the sharp end would have been no good. But you had to roll the cotton wool onto it. You had to get the right amount, right size. I was pretty handy at that. I was no good at doing anything else, but I was pretty good at those two things.
As long as you find what you're good at, David.
You have. You just got to work with strengths, definitely.
Yeah, I did advise one of our parishioners yesterday on the correct way to put her tubie grip on to give the correct support for the ankle. Did they listen to me? No. And when I saw it, I thought all you're doing is preventing improvement, because you're cutting the circulation off because of the way you've got it on. There is a reason why you have tubey grip from, if it's your bad ankle, from the edge of your toes to your knee, because you don't then cut any circulation off and you get full muscle support.
Well, I will keep that in mind next time I require some tubey grip.
Very important, very important. If it's the hand, from the joint of the elbow, if it's an arm thing, you from the joint of the hand to the joint of the elbow, because you don't cut the circulation off, and it gives full muscle support. Very important. There we are. There you are, dear viewer. You've now been given some first aid or whatever. I'm looking forward to being able to use the
defibrillator.
The defibrillator. I'm going on the crash course on use of defibrillator.
Boom.
You've got it.
Barbara was keen to use it on the scarecrow. We spent a large amount of time stuffing a scarecrow yesterday, well, actually, I didn't stuff it. Susanna stuffed it. Then we hauled it back to church, and then we tried to revivify it to make its, body look good. But we were wondering whether we could practice using the defibrillator on this.
Yeah.
Not very good.
One or two people were concerned at Barbara's technique of getting the chest area into place. There were a few concerned people.
The robust attitude of
very
more
robust
disbursement.
So there we are. So there are certain things we've learned about some of our congregation this week who you wouldn't want around you should your chest need robustly putting into place, I guess. But you see, we're now the proud owners in Beaminster Church, Chris, of a defibrillator, because it was 12 months last Friday since poor Martin collapsed and died whilst at choir practice. And the Friends of the Church of St Mary's offered to buy us a defibrillator, which we've now got. Not that the defibrillator would have helped Martin, we know that, but I think it's there now. And we hope that, like Hook, it never has to be used, because the one in Hook has never been used, thankfully. I do keep suggesting it could be good to start cars on a cold day, but thankfully, no one had that to have its service.
Well, Chris is cleaning his glasses, so shall we have our pause while he does that?
Oh, I'll have to read after the pause.
Yeah.
That's better.
Excellent. Right.
We're on Luke chapter 12. Heavy breathing from David. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God." But the parable, or Jesus not being a judge?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the commentary I read, that it said that Jesus didn't want to arbitrate over someone's land dispute. So that's why he's saying, "Who appointed me as judge over you?" Because they're quibbling about land, aren't they?
But Jesus couldn't arbitrate on his own, because the rules were you had to have 3 people. I think.
Ooh.
Jewish law stated that land disputes required 3 people to hear whatever the dispute was.
But we do subscribe to Jesus being judge because he will come to be our judge.
He will.
So,
He will.
Strange that, isn't it? Because we always talk about judgment at the last day. And this is outside of a parable. This is almost real teaching.
yeah. I don't think, though, it is suggesting that he isn't our judge on the last day. I think I'm going with the commentator who suggests he's just not interested in getting involved in the day-to-day ridiculousness of land disputes. But yeah.
So what does that say about us as Christians? What do we get involved in that we shouldn't?
Well, lots, perhaps. Or what would Jesus be? I don't know. I guess it's where your focus is. You know, I think as a Christian, we're probably called to be involved in everything because we're witnesses to the love of God. So therefore, the better spread we are, the better we are witnesses. But then I guess it's what we hold as priorities, isn't it? I think because I see this story to be about priorities. Where do you set your heart? So if your priority is land or wealth, then you probably got the wrong priority.
Yeah, I'm just thinking though, because I remember many years ago, a friend of mine, he almost wouldn't get out of bed in the morning until God told him whether to put his right foot or his left foot out of bed first.
Wow.
It was trying to let God control his life to that extent.
Yeah.
Or was he just lazy?
Well, I was just trying to say, isn't that the sort of thing that Jesus would say, well, I'm not interested, actually.
Yeah, about which foot you get out of bed with first.
So I'm interested because I think Luke's gospel in some ways shows a special interest in issues of wealth and poverty, doesn't he? We hear bits and pieces at other times. And I think this touches on this idea today about what are our values as Christians. Are our values different, maybe, to what others may be regarding keeping money for ourselves when we're trying to encourage others to help, people in need or help where it's required. I think of the food bank. Thankfully, lots of churches across the land are instrumental in trying to encourage people to help those who are in greater need. And we do that here in Beaminster. I'm delighted that we're able to be part of that team of people trying to help people. And I've been particularly, as you know, we were talking about earlier, particularly thrilled by the generosity of people who responded to the £10 challenge from the bishop, and already for the help of relief of poverty, should it occur, and I'm sure it will. The £10 the bishop gave me now stands at over £400. And people who watch us have given money. I'm not going to give anyone's name to embarrass them, but thank you very much to those who've sent me money over the past few weeks to and encourage me with kind words about that. So I think there's something about what our values are, what the Christian values are about wealth, as opposed to what perhaps this story was saying of the one brother who wanted his money or whatever the case may be, or building bigger barns. The last thing I'd do is build a bigger barn, I think, at this precise moment, because there's very little perhaps to put in it.
It's interesting. I think when you think about the values of the world and the values of Christianity or the values of Jesus, I think the clash is so discordant over the value of money and property.
Yep.
Because the world teaches us, or the developed world, the Western world, the capitalist world teaches us that the more money you have, the better. The more resources you have, the better. The more wealth, the more possessions. This whole, the whole of capitalism is funded on more, isn't it? It's just the essence of it. And so this teaching is massively countercultural because it's actually saying less. Because nothing you acquire on earth will have any difference when your earthly life comes to an end. But then you think, you sit that against planning sensibly for your retirement, or investing, people telling you it's good to invest in property. I find this so difficult because on one level, I feel very keen to rejoice with rejecting consumerism. But then on the other hand, I just have to cast an eye around my house to see that there's plenty of consumerism going on in the Neary household. And that somehow we've got to be sensible about providing for a future. It's really hard. I find this stuff really difficult.
Yeah, I think it's what you do with wealth, isn't it? I don't think Jesus says people shouldn't have wealth. It's what you believe you can do to support or help others. I think Luke's gospel tells us that if you truly believe that life doesn't consist of abundance and possessions, and you can express your faith by how you give alms, what does Jesus say to the disciples? Go and give away all your possessions and make purses for yourself that won't wear out. It's that bit I like about unfailing treasure at times. There are many people who are extremely wealthy who benefit the world. I think of J.K. Rowling, for one, who gives abundance away for good.
I don't want to talk about J.K. Rowling.
You may not, but she still gives lots of money away to charity. Or you can think of other people in the world who give lots of money away because that's what they believe they should do.
Yeah, but doesn't that push it away from us? You see, I'm never going to be rich like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. I'm only ever going to be rich in the context of my riches, but there's still a challenge for us about what we do with our possessions and whether we have more than we need and whether we are greedy. I don't think we should push it too far away from us. I think we are, what are the statistics that most people in this country are sitting in the top 5% of wealth across the world because so many people are poor?
Well, it's what we do with it, isn't it, I guess?
I think you've got, I think a lot of wealth can go in the category of, part of it is the Jesus saying, actually, I'm not interested. But then the other half of it is, unless your wealth is upsetting the well-being of somebody else. So if I just look at my newspaper this morning, it just says, British gas owners Centrica's profits soar as UK households face winter bill energy pain. There's somebody who's just forked out £500 for 500 litres of oil. That's energy pain. They're making excess profits. That's, I think, what Jesus was saying is that's getting excessive. So when we get people who hoard money that leaves everybody else poor, then there's a problem. But if you're, but ultimately, I suppose you could say, unless money's equally distributed to every single human being equally, then you're hoarding it. But I don't even think Jesus was going quite that far. I think Jesus is saying, look, be on your guard. It's easy to want more and more and to hoard. And it's interesting, the people I speak to that have got lots of money, they have to spend huge amounts of money on alarm systems, etc., and security. There's nothing worth nicking in my house.
True. Well, but I think at every level, it says, life does not exist. Life does not consist of the abundance of possessions.
Yeah.
You only need to look at how many books there are sitting on that bookshelf. Probably don't need all of those, really, do we?
Have you read them all?
No. Some of them I have. Some of them I've dipped in and out of. A couple I've never opened the pages of.
I think my bookcase behind me is probably the same. There's many books there I haven't opened. There's many I've dipped in, and some I have read. I often, somebody tells me about a good book, I go and buy it and think, oh, I'll read that one day. And then I don't.
I think we've talked about this before, but there was a photographer in the paper a few years ago where he went and did like top-down photographs of every possession you owned in your house, and he did it all over the world. And it was fascinating because he made people get out everything from their house and lay it all out on a piece of land, and then he took a photo of it. And of course, if you lived in a tiny one-bedroom flat in Japan, compared with living in a massive great house somewhere else, or a constructed house in a village in Africa, of course, the amount of possessions you had was a completely different number. And it was quite, when you see it all laid out, it's quite sobering. You know, somebody might just have one knife, one fork, one bowl, one spoon. You think about even laying out the contents of my kitchen. I wrestle with this stuff quite a lot. I think there's something for me very attractive about having less, but it's quite a difficult concept.
Yeah, I think a lot of life gets simpler when we have less, but we're always in this little trap of wanting more. And why does our brains want to accumulate more?
Yeah.
You know, why do we need an extra smoothie maker in the kitchen when we've got a blender?
Because of capitalism. I don't know. It's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, and clearly the desire for humans to have more and more was as prevalent in first century Judea as it is in first century Dorset or New York or Singapore, or as a 21st century. It's a human conundrum. It's ever been thus.
I remember I did a marketing course once, and the guy started by saying, marketing is all about creating desire, not need, because ultimately all a human being needs to survive is water, bread, a cave, and that's it. He said everything else that you have is a choice, and marketing is about creating the desire so that the choice is something that you want to sell them. Isn't that almost what we're trying to do? Isn't that almost the word evangelism? We're creating the desire to help people make the choice to follow God. Or am I being too complex there? Jesus clears out, when he gets to the parable, he changes from physical possessions to, I will say to my soul, you've ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink. So it's not, oh, physical body, you've got lots of possessions. That is your soul. Oh, I've got lots of spiritual goods. I don't need to pray anymore.
You see, I've always understood this particular reading that one day I'm going to have to render account to God for the way I've used the resources that have been available to me, which ultimately there is anyway. And
well,
so,
do you find that comforting?
No, not always. Not always, but I think as we all do, some of the things you mentioned books, like everyone else, and practically every clergy person. I'm sure I've got hundreds of books over there that I've read bits of or dipped in, as you say. Did I need that other extra book I bought a few weeks ago? Well, no. Will I get around to reading it? Well, time is not on my side, of course, but I may do one day. But it's not just that, is it? It's why did I buy the other day 2 packets of cherry tomatoes just because they'd been reduced, knowing that ultimately probably I'll throw half of the 1 packet away because I just won't have time. There's only a limit to how many cherry tomatoes, for example, that I can eat on a more practical way. Now, if there was the community fridge available, I could go and put that half of a bag, at least I'm hopefully doing something good that someone can benefit from rather than waste them. And there's so much resource that available to us that perhaps we don't use properly or can't use properly because we perhaps don't know how to use it properly.
It's a tough little passage, isn't it? Because it opens up an awful lot of discussion around all those things about resources, wealth, consuming.
It appears to me
simplicity.
That the three of us have almost asked more questions today than we've answered.
Mm. Well, I think it's very, yeah. Well, I just think that's because it's such a challenge.
It is.
And the way we respond to it will feel different. Or
I think with a passage like this, we have to be very careful that we're not patronising and saying, "Oh yes, we do this and we don't do that because we shouldn't be doing it." And in all essence, we're no different to everybody else. We all know that we do things that aren't what God asks of us or tells us about.
Well, I think we've been the complete opposite of patronising. I think
exactly.
We've wrestled as humans with how tricky this passage is because
I've heard sermons on this where the person giving the sermon has suggested that they would never do this, and you've got to improve and do better. And I think you've got to be so very, very careful. Yeah, very, very careful. When I was up in a vicar up in Shropshire, we had a company similar to Hardwell's down here in Dorset, called Browns of Wem, and they built farm buildings, barns, outhouses, you name it. And Charles, who was the owner of the business, was one of our church wardens, and he told me once that he'd been asked by a farmer to take down the old buildings which had been bought as part of ex-war stock, i.e. pig pens and things which they bought off after the war. They were air raid shelters they turned into things. And to build this huge barn on his building. And Charles said, "But why you'll never fill that with the acreage of your farm?" He said, "No, I never will." He said, "But the bloke next door keeps on trying to prove he's got more than me. That'll show him." And I think this is exactly what this story is all about, isn't it? In many ways, it just proves the point. And I did say to him, "What did he keep in this barn, Charles? Did you know?" He said, "Well, the only time I ever visited after we completed, we were talking 30 years previous, whatever." He said the only thing I ever saw him keeping there was his tractor and his Rolls Royce."
Just
Chris,
the one.
end with that Augustine quote, because that was great.
Oh, I've got to find it now. Hold on. Right, St. Augustine said, this is St. Augustine's comment on this passage. He said, "The man did not realise that the bellies of the poor are much safer storerooms than his barns."
And that's where we're going to leave it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us for a wrestle. I don't think it was a Rev chat today. It was a Rev wrestle, Rev question, a Rev delve. So thank you for joining us and delve into that passage. I'm quite sad it's the fifth Sunday because it's fewer people come to church on a fifth Sunday. I feel like fewer people are going to wrestle with this big old passage, but there we are. You can find us on our social media and our websites for the Egerton and Comers Benefice and the Beaminster Area Team. It's been lovely to see you, to hear you, to join with you this week. We'll see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.